We've covered a lot of Sopranos watches on this channel so far. In fact, 3 of the channel's 8 videos are Sopranos, but I figured it was time to explore a different kind of gangster classic. One that's every bit as stylish, brutal, and unforgettable. Which is why today, we're going to be diving into the watches worn in Goodfellas. Unlike the Sopranos, there's less screen time for the watches, but they're still there. Subtle, period accurate, and often easy to miss unless you know what to look for. From Henry Hill to Jimmy Conway, we'll break down the key pieces, what they are, or likely are, and what they say about the characters wearing them. Let me tell you, this one wasn't as easy as some of the others. Let's start with Henry Hill. Played by Ray Liotta, Henry's the narrator and central figure of Goodfellas. He starts out as a young kid running errands for the mob and rises through the ranks, living the high life before it all comes crashing down. Stylish, ambitious, and always chasing more, Henry's watch choices reflect that climb from street level to sky high. Let me just start by mentioning that if you search Henry Hill watch online and are expecting to find the one Ray Liotta wore in Goodfellas, you'll probably end up looking at the wrong watch. And that's because most of the results show the timepiece worn by the real-life Henry Hill, not the character in the film. That watch is a Seiko Quartz SQ 7813 8019, a simple, no-nonsense piece that Hill wore in his later years, long after his time in the mob. And while it's sort of similar to one of the watches Ray wears in the movie, it's not quite the same. And the key aspect to look at here is that many of the watches donned the Henry Hill watch do not have the integrated, specifically woven mesh bracelet of the watch he wears on screen. I don't know how so many of these watch pages miss that. During the late 1960s and into the 1970s, gold watches with intricate bracelets, especially integrated mesh or woven designs, were extremely popular. This was a time when dress watches were all about being thin, elegant, and powered by quartz. Gold, or at least gold tone, was a clear status symbol, especially in big cities and among people on the rise. Brands like Longines, Omega, Patek Philippe, Piaget, and even Seiko jumped on the trend, cranking out ultra-thin quartz watches with detailed, jewelry-like bracelets that felt as much like fashion statements as they did timepieces. So while I can't quite pinpoint the exact watch he wears, my money would be on either an Omega DeVille quartz, Rolex Cellini, or Patek Philippe Calatrava, though I'm leaning more toward the first option, as it looks, at least in this shot, to be outfitted with a diamond bezel. But of course, we can never discount a different Seiko as an option, as they've got such a massive collection of watches to choose from. The next watch he wears is a little easier, and a watch we've also seen on the wrist of Tony Soprano, an all-gold Rolex Day-Date Presidential. When he finally sports this piece toward the end of the film, it's easy to miss, but it says a lot. At this point in the story, Henry's deep into the drug trade. He's paranoid, unstable, and trying to hold onto a version of the high life that's slipping through his fingers. The Day-Date isn't just a luxury watch, it's the power watch, worn by presidents, mob bosses, and anyone trying to project absolute success. In Hill's case, it feels like overcompensation, like he's trying to prove to himself and everyone else that he's still in control. I like to think he bought it impulsively, riding high on drug money and false confidence. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, a yellow gold Day-Date would have cost around $3,500 to $5,000 USD. Today, that same watch easily goes for $10,000 to $15,000, depending on configuration, especially if it's in good condition and all original. But are we done? Oh no, because Ray actually wears 3 watches in the film, the last of which is a gold-plated Orion quartz watch on a black lizard leather strap. The kind of watch a guy like Henry would have worn when he was still sharp, controlled, and rising fast. It wasn't a luxury piece, but it looked the part, and that's exactly what mattered in that world. We see it during some of his most iconic early scenes, including the moment he pistol whips Karen's neighbor, and the now famous Funny How confrontation with Tommy. Back then, this would have cost $50 to $100 USD max. Today, not much either. But if you happen to get a hold of the exact watch worn by Liotta, then it will hold additional collector's value, especially with a letter of authenticity from the film's prop master. Paulie Cicero. Paulie Cicero, played by Paul Sorvino, is calm, calculated, and the kind of capo who never had to raise his voice to command respect. He didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. And while everyone around him was flashing jewelry and running their mouths, Paulie stayed quiet, and so did his watch. And on his wrist, well, this one is just as tricky as Henry's. My personal opinion, I strongly suspect that it's a gold Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso on a leather strap. The rectangular K-shape, the way it sits on the wrist, and the way the case lines up with the bracelet all seem to make sense. I've seen others online speculate that the watch could perhaps be a Cartier Tank Louis, which I suppose is a possibility, but I'm partial to the JLC. And stylistically, that watch would fit Paulie to a T. Quite luxury, nothing loud, but still serious money. The kind of watch you buy when you know what you're doing, not when you're trying to impress anyone. It's not confirmed, of course, there's very little clear footage of the watch, but based on the proportions and vibe, the Reverso makes a lot of sense. In the early 80s, a gold Reverso would have cost around $3,000 to $4,500 USD. Today, that same piece can go for $12,000 to $20,000, depending on condition and configuration. Not flashy, not common, just pure class, like Paulie. Jimmy Conway. Smooth, disciplined, and always 2 steps ahead. Played by Robert De Niro, Jimmy's the kind of guy who keeps it sharp. Perfectly tailored suits, polished shoes, and not a hair out of place. He's not loud like Tommy, and not reckless like Henry. Jimmy's in control, and he dresses like it. Fittingly, he wears not one, but 3 different watches throughout the film, each of them subtle, classic, and tough to pin down. No oversized cases, no flashy diamonds, just clean lines and gold tones that blend effortlessly into his look. They're seen mostly in passing, often under a cuff, and none of them really get enough screen time to confirm a make or model. But I've got a few ideas. The first watch I want to point out is a rectangular cased gold piece that shows up in several key scenes, and based on available records, it's most likely a vintage Hamilton. According to De Niro's screen-worn inventory at the Harry Ransom Center, the watch is described as an 18-karat yellow gold vintage watch with a black tonneau-style dial, gold Arabic numerals, and a 14-karat yellow gold Panther Link bracelet with a fold-over clasp. And I can't imagine a more suitable brand to attach to this description than Hamilton. In this photo, Jimmy appears to be wearing a Cartier Tank, or at the very least, a watch clearly inspired by one. The slim rectangular gold case, understated black leather strap, and classic proportions are all hallmarks of the Tank's iconic design. Whether it's a Tank Louis, Solo, or Must is harder to say without a closer look, but the overall silhouette places it firmly in Cartier territory. Last up, we've got whatever this watch is. Again, very hard to say, but my best guess would be that it's some sort of vintage Omega Seamaster or DeVille, based on the proportions of the watch and the bracelet. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Sorry I couldn't be more definitive with my picks in this episode, but hey, I guess that just leaves more room for debate in the comments. Let me know what you think these watches are down in the comment section below. Until next time, thanks for checking out the watch list.